So we're going to be talking with several startups, many who have been a part of several different incubators and accelerators. I'm Corinne Leach. I'm from Moffitt Cancer Center, and I'm also here representing CancerX. CancerX is a private-public partnership that is really focused on accelerating innovation in cancer. We do a lot of focus in digital tool development, platform development, biotech, and health tech. And we have a big focus in equitable care for all. So in our first year, we launched in February 2023 with support from HHS as part of the Cancer Moonshot that was reignited by Biden. And we have an accelerator. So our first year, we had 16 companies. And last night at midnight, we closed applications on our second accelerator with an expanded group of champions. We have several VCs. We have several health systems. In addition to Moffitt Cancer Center, we have Atrium Advocate Health. We have Memorial Sloan Kettering. KidsX has now joined us. So we have continued to expand that and look forward to looking through our applications for this year and selecting our cohort. So today, really the Cancer Moonshot is working to end cancer as we know it with a bold new vision to prevent over 4 million cancer deaths by 2047. So that's reducing cancer mortality by 50%, which is a very transformative movement, and that takes all of us together. So this takes revolutionary therapies to cutting-edge diagnostic tools. The future of cancer treatment truly is unfolding before all of us, and we are at the forefront of that change. So I'd love for all of us we can just maybe go right down the line and have each of you introduce yourselves, your company, what problem you're uniquely solving for, and how you're contributing to the Cancer Moonshot goal of reducing cancer mortality by 50%.
Sure, I'll start. Rahul Aras, CEO for Iterion. We are focused on what's known as the Wnt beta-catenin pathway. So most people here will know that's been a pathway of interest to the cancer field for about 30 years. It's been challenging from a drug development perspective because beta-catenin itself is undruggable, and the pathway itself is associated with a lot of toxicity. We're going after a very novel target in that pathway downstream called TIBL1. And what we're seeing right now, we're actually in the middle of a liver cancer study. We're seeing that it's much more tolerable than a lot of those Wnt inhibitors that were in development before. And more importantly, we're seeing some very nice activity. So even though we're still in a dose escalation phase of this study, we're seeing clinical responses. We're seeing patients who have been heavily pretreated sustain their disease on drug for long periods of time. And so how are we affecting Cancer Moonshot? I mean, if you look at liver cancer itself, 40,000 patients a year, 30,000 die of liver cancer each year. If you look at the larger opportunity, Wnt beta-catenin is implicated in almost 500,000 cancers each year, things like colorectal cancer and breast cancer. So hopefully through developing our drug, tegavivint, we can impact that. The reality is we'll all need to work together because no single drug is able to do everything. So it's going to be the combination of these different modalities that's going to make that impact.
Marija.
Bon appetit, everybody. I'm Marija Plodinec. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Artidis. Artidis is a cancer diagnostics company. We are developing a very unique nanotechnology platform that operates in a near patient setting. We analyze physical properties of different tissue components at cellular, subcellular resolution. And now you might ask yourself, how does that fit into all the different types of molecular analysis and biomarkers we see today? Well, we are really interested in measuring and analyzing cell-cell and cell-tissue interactions, because at the end of the day, what really prevents number of therapies to respond, and specifically in the focus area where we are working, such as immunotherapy or a number of targeted therapies, is the lack of permeability, either of immune cells or those molecules to reach their target. And the physical component of that is critical. So how do we analyze that? We need the right tools and the tools at the right resolution. So this is really what we are set to do. We work both longitudinally across a number of different solid tumors, as well as vertically looking at patients in a neoadjuvant setting and then post-surgery in adjuvant setting. And our focus is optimizing both the diagnostics component, because as I said, we work in a near patient testing, so we have the ability to analyze that first treatment-naive biopsy, and then obviously follow those patients on treatment. Originally based in Basel, Switzerland, which is another healthcare hub, but since now 5 years, Houston is our home, and actually I hope you will get to see our office on the 3rd floor here as a part of Portal. So really happy to be here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dede Willis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Orbit Genomics. We are a platform company that we believe we are transforming cancer and other complex disease diagnosis, treatment, and prevention through our platform, which analyzes novel markers that uniquely reflect not just your inherited disease risk, but also the risk you've acquired from living. And we're applying our first product is in cancer. It is for diagnosing lung cancer, which is the world's deadliest cancer. And it's the world's deadliest cancer in large part because it is typically diagnosed very late at stage 3 or 4 when it's often untreatable. And so that is where we're focused for the Cancer Moonshot.
Hey everybody, for those who don't know me, I'm Michael Torres, the CEO of CrossBridge Bio. So we are a startup that recently launched right here out of the Houston ecosystem, and we're focused on developing the next generation of antibody drug conjugates. So ADCs are now an emerging class and been worked on for decades, in fact, but now have really sort of come into stride to understand the right way to put these drugs together, which essentially to date have delivered cytotoxic or chemo drugs to specific tumor cells, whether it's heme, malignancies or solid tumors, to deliver those payloads. And through a lot of optimization, we're now at the point where these ADCs, have a better therapeutic index than systemic chemo, which we all know is effective, but very toxic. So technology that was invented right here, actually in the 2nd floor of this building, is where we, have taken that technology out and now moving it forward towards the clinic. We raised $10 million with investors that maybe we'll talk about later, and also got a seed award from CPRIT too. So really doing our best to unlock the potential of this therapeutic class in a way that will significantly transform patients, as we have already started to see with the current generation of ADCs, particularly in the breast, bladder, and lung cancer space. So lots more work to do, but that's what we're all here to try to accomplish. So nice to meet everybody.
I'm Max Mamonkin. I'm a faculty at Baylor Center of Cell and Gene Therapy. My interest is engineering T cells for the therapy of cancer, and I'm also a scientific co-founder of Much Biosciences, which is also headquartered here in Portal. And so our main mission is to target cancers that are largely neglected by the big players. So we started with a disease that has very poor prognosis, the T-cell derived cancers. So there's a lot of options for B-cell malignancies, including CAR T-cells that work really, really well there. But expanding them to T-cell cancer is very difficult because of the number of challenges associated with engineering that. And that was sort of my dragon to slay as I started my path in academia at Baylor. And then one advantage of working in a center, and you just heard Dr. Reddy talking about it in the previous panel, is that we can translate our things to the clinic very efficiently and then iterate on that until we start seeing really good responses in patients. And so at that point, I teamed up with Sarah, who's also here in the audience, and we formed March Bio, and with the goal of really bringing this therapy to every patient that will benefit from it, and then rinse and repeat, and really try to replicate the same for other indications, lung cancers and other solid tumors as well. So happy to be here.
Great. So when we think about portal innovations, we think about Cancer X, incubators and accelerators are a big portion of it. And many that exist provide different value to different types of startups depending on what phase they're in. So I wanted to start with Dede, who was part of our inaugural cohort of the Cancer X Accelerator, especially because of the work you're doing in lung cancer in terms of early diagnosis. And wanted just to hear from you a little bit on the value, and then wanted to expand it to the rest of the panel to hear more about the value that they've received from the Portal Innovation Incubator program.
Yes, thank you. And I should say, I think I might be the only panelist. I'm not part of the Houston community, although I did live here many years ago and actually went to U of H for to get my MBA. But I'm located in Boulder, Colorado, and being part of the Cancer X Accelerator was a tremendous boost for our company. We already had a lot of clinical partners established, but we also, through the Cancer X Accelerator, gained relationships with our two sponsors, which were Moffitt Cancer Center, as well as Iterion Health. And our collaborations and partnerships with their key opinion leaders in lung cancer are going to be invaluable in making sure that our upcoming clinical trials meet actual requirements for everyone to show that we can prove that our simple blood test will not only improve patient outcomes and save lives, but also save insurance companies potentially billions of dollars. And so they'll also work with us to ensure that we get reimbursement from insurers and also adoption from other clinicians. The accelerator also had a tremendous pool of people that we could reach out to get mentors, to get help from, and I'm still in contact with most of them, even though we've already graduated. So it's been a really huge boost for us.
It's helpful to hear. So anytime you're engaging in an accelerator or an incubator, it is a time commitment. Oftentimes it's what you put in that brings the value, but curious to also for ourselves at Cancer X, but then also for Portal to hear what additional value have you all experienced from being engaged in incubators and accelerators. So Max, curious to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, maybe I can eliminate a path from the academic side, because for lab rats like me, these incubators are tremendous help, because we have no idea how to approach the commercialization. We're not trained for that. We have very little understanding. And so having a space where you can actually come and talk to people and gain some knowledge and learn their language is tremendous. And that's, CrossBridge Bio, we founded it after it was incubated at the Accelerator for Cancer Therapeutics here down the road at TMC Innovation. And I was a part of the inaugural cohort. I had no idea what I was doing. But we, through this process, I started to better understand what it takes to commercialize it. And for me, it wasn't really the goal. To me, it was a means to sort of a way to bring those therapies to the patients. I wasn't really interested in commercialization per se. But then I realized that this is absolutely critical to really scale up and bring this to the clinic on a large scale. And so accelerators like TMC X and like Portal, it brings tremendous value for us just from the educational perspective, but also from the ability to meet the right people who we can team up with and form a company and start driving it forward.
Yeah. If I can add, so to complement Max, I was one of the EI entrepreneurs and residents of this cancer accelerator that Sarah was also a part of and ultimately started March. So for me, I had co-founded a company, it was my postdoc project out of the lab up at UT Southwestern in Dallas called Iterion Therapeutics, and Recode went on to raise over $400 million, had really good investors, really good strategic partners, but for myself, not being a CEO yet, I literally sat on the board with OrbiMed, MPM, big investors, and they said to me, look, we know you know good science, but you don't have a track record. You haven't made us any money. We're not going to back you until you prove yourself. And so I left to join the accelerator, which gave me the opportunity to see some really exciting technologies out of the Texas ecosystem, again funded by CPRIT. And I was able to, in my case, leverage those relationships that I had with investors and scientists, pharma, what have you, to find projects that ultimately, I could take out as a CEO. And in this case, that became CrossBridge Bio, the company that I had co-founded. And so that accelerator here enabled me to, again, find the project, put the team together. We raised a little bit of money from high net worth individuals, did a pre-seed round per se, which Portal and the TMC Venture Fund participated in. And then from there, was able to apply for a CPRIT grant. We got that as well. And then recently closed on a 10 million seed round that included, investment from TMC Venture Fund. They led the round, Portal Innovations, Alexandria, Crescent Enterprise, a nice syndicate to get the story off the ground. And then again, as I mentioned, we're on the my co-founders were on the second floor, and then now the labs where we're at Portal Innovations are there on the third floor. And so, being here literally in this building enables us to have really great conversations with my scientific co-founders. We can use the lab space as well, and in that case, UT Health Houston, which is an institution that hadn't really allowed companies to be in their academic space, but because of the building that we're in right now, have now started to work on enabling that. We're really all coming together in a really fantastic way, from the Capitol on the fourth floor to the incubator space on the third floor to academic labs and some of the other core facilities that are here, Texas A&M as an example, to really just supercharge the development of these assets. So this is all, again, thanks to the incubators, the accelerators, the capital that's sitting here within this institution, this building, and it's just fantastic to be a part of it. So.
No, I just wanted to add, you said we need to invest time, and I think this is really, really important component. So before you decide to take your time and go to a certain accelerator program, the most important question is, what do I want to get out of that program? And so when we decided to join the TMC Innovation Program in 2019, the reason why we came was really the concentration of the clinical knowledge and hospitals here. When some of our colleagues asked us, coming out from Switzerland to US, why not Boston? Or why not, West Coast, California? There is no other place in US where in this perimeter you have so many hospitals, and especially working in oncology. So it helped us to build those collaborations. And today we have strategic partnerships with MD Anderson, we work with Baylor College of Medicine, we work with Houston Methodist. So we managed in this couple of years foster incredible strategic collaborations that will help bring our company forward. Now thinking beyond that, we need also a business development expertise, we need commercial expertise. Probably we will not find all of that in Houston. So we need to think broadly outside of this space, but I think what's really value here, it's incredible concentration of medical expertise. And if we could enhance it with more business and commercial expertise, which I really think that this TMCX is potentially bringing, which is why we decided to join the Portal Innovation as well, because now you are part of the community. So you're not just, hang out to this place, but with everybody that is communicating within Portal. And I think that's important to also expand the ecosystem in Houston, and I see no reason why, Third Coast would not be the most attractive coast for healthcare.
I can just echo stuff at the end of the day, because it's really about the network. And one of the things Portal does extremely well is they extend your network. So, especially if you're doing this for the first time or you're starting a company, it's incredibly hard to get meetings with investors. It's hard to know who the right vendor or consultant is, or when to add the right people to your team. And I can say, we've been part of this now for about a year. The extended network that they're providing has been invaluable. And it's been on all of those. So meeting investors, getting a couple of key consultants and advisors, understanding maybe some of the vendors who could add value to the team. So having that without having to create all that infrastructure yourself is super helpful.
Really valuable insights here. And what a beautiful space for us all to be hosted in, and very much look forward to a tour later today. Many things that we hear from startups who are going through accelerator programs are challenges that they're facing when scaling. So curious to hear from you all about some of the challenges that you've encountered on scaling, and what you've done to actually work through those challenges, what's actually worked.
Yeah, so I'll start. You'll never have enough money to do everything you want. So it's never going to happen. And so you have to start to think about how to be efficient, prioritize, and get the most out of what you have. And it gets back a little bit to this infrastructure, right? Like the labs that they have up there, to build those labs yourself, not possible at the early stages. To build a team of good business development advisors, clinical advisors off a couple $1 million isn't easy, but if you start bringing like consultants and building it in a stepwise process, you can get there. So I really think it does come down to establishing a network and a web and an infrastructure that you can utilize and pull people into when you need to. And then, being able to evolve that as the company evolves, because our needs now as a clinical stage company are completely different than they were 3-4 years ago. And so we've needed to evolve to that. But, we don't necessarily have the same team members or vendors or advisors that we had 3 years ago, so you need that flexibility as well.
Yeah, I would just echo on the fundraising part, or not having enough money. I mean, as a diagnostics company, which we were talking about in the prep room.
Have enough money either.
Exactly. Diagnostics typically, if not always, take the back seat to therapeutics when it comes to the fundraising arena. And one of the really important points that I think the Cancer Moonshot really pointed out to me, and is if you look at the CancerX Accelerator, the inaugural cohort purposely did not include any therapeutics, because to meet the Cancer Moonshot's goal of cutting cancer deaths in half by 2047, you cannot do that with therapeutics alone. We have to have better and earlier diagnosis and screening. And that's really what drives my team, our team at Orbit Genomics, and why we chose, even though we're a platform company, why we chose to launch with the diagnostic. But that really is, funding is really the challenge for us.
I would say funding, commercial launch, reimbursement is probably a second, or if not the most important topic in our space. Because in diagnostics, most companies don't fail because the technology doesn't work. It's typically because they don't get reimbursed at a level that would justify the investment. So thinking early about how to overcome those challenges was something very critical for us. Also working in this space here, working with a number of hospitals, but also other stakeholders. The other, I think, really important aspects that differentiates diagnostics from therapeutics is we all face manufacturing issues. In therapeutics, typically this would be outsourced for earlier stage companies. In diagnostics, that's a very important question which each company needs to answer for themselves, because there is no one size fits all. If you are building an equipment, you need to ensure the quality because it needs to go through regulatory approval. If you have innovative technology, time to market is everything. So you need to think about, do I have all the pieces under control to do that? And then at the end, it does come back to funding, because somebody needs to invest in that, believing that you will be that diagnostic company that will finally provide return. So those were really the challenges we were trying to resolve over the past years. I think we have been rather successful moving forward now. Also thinking about different types of funding. We heard in the morning about VC, so institutional funding, maybe grants through CrossBridge. If we think about diagnostics, we do have to think about maybe some other modalities through very experienced healthcare, family offices, people that have built those kind of companies before and are willing to invest more and at a longer time scale to support these companies moving forward if we really want to achieve the goals as we discussed. And again, that was another solution we looked at out of the box, and we managed from seed to Series B, raise roughly $100 million to date. So it is possible. It's not easy, but it's definitely possible. Yeah.
I think if I will add my 2 cents here, but also give some advice, is really around choosing your team wisely. So all of these challenges, the right people can help you solve those, and maybe funding can help you get the right people. I think there's other ways, equity, you can be strategic in that, particularly when you're starting off early. But you heard from CPRIT, Kristen earlier about like the things that they look for, and it's has somebody done it before? Have they raised the money? I think in CPRIT, my read is it tends to be like, have you raised money, to date? What have you raised today? Can you raise? Can you keep funding? That's ultimately what you have, the vehicle to continue moving forward in development. So really thinking about your team, who you have around the table, what are the gaps you need, what are your own gaps, what strengths can you bring in from others that'll help you get to where you need to go. If, hey, investor X says, we don't see someone clinical on your team, okay, well then go get that, or find a consultant, or, really, again, think through who you partner with, and that's at management, it's founder, it's all of those important things that ultimately will help you get to, as high of a probability of success as you can get, because it's biology, it's drug development, it's not, none of it's guaranteed, but you can really think about, how do I give myself the best chance? And so when you're starting off early, I would say be very critical in thinking about the team that you put together. So.
And what I'm also hearing from previous panels to this is the importance of a phased approach, and really knowing, okay, we're in this phase, these are our goals. Where do we go next? And where do we go after that? And how do we keep ramping this up? I'll say, being in a health system, we look for that. So we look for, all health systems these days have pilotitis, where we're kind of tired of pilots because 5% actually move on beyond a pilot. And so what I'm hearing from funders are, they're also looking to have clarity on your current phase, what you're driving toward, what you'll get to and when, what the next step is, what you need then. And it's iterative process, but we look for that, and that's what our executives in health systems are looking for too, is clarity on not just the now, what are you pitching now to pilot out, but really how do you start implementing at broader scale, and what works for whom, and what is that strategy. So there's a lot of synergy in a lot of the things we're talking about, and with looking at accelerators and incubators in helping to really bolster who you have on your team, who you have advising you. We've seen a lot of successes in different startups bringing in and bolstering their scientific advisory boards through mentors, and it's, it can be really valuable to startups as well as to mentors themselves for these different accelerators. So I'd like to encourage those to continue raising your hand and leaning into being mentors, because it's incredibly beneficial. We also heard on the last session about the importance of having kind of clinical expertise at the table, ideally as a co-founder, but at a minimum advisory boards. Curious to hear more from all of you on how you engage with, how you collect feedback, how you engage with patients and clinicians as you continue to build out your solutions, and how that that drives changes in your roadmap and where you go next.
So maybe I can start. The whole idea of March came from the clinical project at Baylor, and so we sort of interacted with clinicians at a very early stage when I was still a postdoc, and I was trying to create that therapy for this disease. And a lot of clinicians just said, we need to get it to the clinic as soon as possible, because there's no other options for these patients. If they don't respond to standard of care, the game is over for them. And so that drove initially early implementation of this in the clinic. And we also worked with clinicians very tightly every time, maintaining communication, what's going on with the patients, how do they respond, their toxicities, is their expansion. And that allowed us to see problems early on with that therapy and go back to the drawing board and formulate hypotheses how we can fix it. And then we actually implemented changes in the GMP manufacturing of our cell product that completely transformed the responses from 16% to 75% and very durable complete remissions. And so without really that communication with clinicians, it will be very difficult to do because, when it's one-way street, you just, okay, well, take this and play with it. But when you have that communication, that really helps always improve the product. And so we, constantly engage with clinicians in our space, but also outside of that. In T-cell malignancies, there are key opinion leaders that are very interested in seeing, the phase 2 that's coming up. Their centers really driving that clinical trial at their centers. But also, there's always discussions around other things. Can we expand onto these indications and where the clinical unmet need is? And again, these points were brought up earlier. Sometimes you can say that, yeah, there's a drug for it, but that drug really just extends survival by 2 months or whatever. So we can definitely do better. And it's really talking to the clinical leaders is when we can get that information and really gauge the interest. And then we can go and then engineer cell therapies for that, or antibodies, or ADCs, or small molecules. But I think having that conversation early on will help drive the project in the right direction, because you can spend a lot of time at the bench in the lab developing something that will never be applied to the clinic just because there's a better solution for that. There's not economical. It's, only 5 patients a year would have that disease. And so really engaging them at early points help, really drive them in a productive direction.
Maybe I'll add on to that. The patient side is important too. I think, the thing with cancer, I'm assuming everyone here knows someone who has had cancer, and it is difficult, right? And so we spend a lot of our days looking at cells and graphs and charts, but it really is about the patients we're treating. And so, I try to think about that when we're going through our clinical studies. It's not just about, hey, did you get a PR? Did you get the patient in on trial? It's about how's their quality of life? How are they able to manage that? If they have a wedding that weekend, are they able to go and feel okay at that? And I think you need to bring that into what you're doing. First of all, it's rewarding to know that you're making that kind of impact. And secondly, that's where the treatment really is, right? A treatment that gets you a quick response with a terrible quality of life isn't going to impact the patient the way you want to, right? And so if you think about, you can't always talk to the patients on your study, but we all have personal experiences, and we know people have struggled through therapies, the good, the bad. As we try to evolve our therapies to meet their needs, I think it has a large impact.
Yeah, I would really like to underscore that, because I think understanding what the patients need and how they will benefit from the technology or developing, it's essential. Especially for us, we work in near patient testing, so our patients do get to see our device, do get to see our technology, and how clinicians interact with the patients to explain how this will be useful to them is equally important. And, adding to your point, just thinking about patient is one thing, but we can engage patients through patient advocacy. And I think this is really, really critical aspect that we have brought in early on into our company and into our thinking. And patient advocates do interact with patients. So we can get that, semi-direct feedback, which I think it's important when you are developing any kind of novel therapeutics or novel technology. And in fact, we do have our patient advocate is here with us today. So if you visit Artidis later and you have questions, she would be happy to talk to you, I'm pretty sure. Stacy, I'm sorry.
If I could throw one more thing in there. We've talked about patients and clinicians and including them, which we do. I speak to groups literally every week. One of the things that we've really focused on to ensure that we're going to have an end result that is effective for everyone is diversity. We've talked about diversity among many different things, but for us, we focus on the patient diversity, which is why we have clinics around the country that we're going to be working with for our trials, as well as the physician diversity, because different types of physicians see these patients. For lung cancer, on our advisory board, we have oncologists, we have thoracic surgeons, we have radiologists, we have pulmonologists, and we work with all of them, and they're all seeing the patients at a different point in their journey, and it's really important that we include all of them in our solution. And we also have them from around the country, because lung cancer, also diagnosing it, has some nuances that are regional. So having that diversity, and also to what was said earlier about teams, it's also in our team. We've heard that a lot today, but making sure you have all the disciplines in your teams, whether they're directly or people you're collaborating with, I think is really important to come up with the right solution for everyone.
I may add then just one additional angle that really, I think for me, and I say this a lot, emphasizes the ecosystem that we have and the special place that we have here in Houston. So as an example, there's an investor interested in investing in CrossBridge. He happened to be good friends with David Hong, who's a clinician at MD Anderson. David was like, hey, this is really neat. I want to meet Michael, so I want to learn about the tech. He introduced me to Funda Merrick-Bernstein. Funda presented the Daiichi data, standing ovation in 2022 at ASCO. Then Kathy Dumbrava. All these folks just get really excited, and they're here, they're local. They want to support the technologies, that obviously come into MD Anderson, but like we are the people that are like on the front lines for them. That's going to be the next thing, and they want to be able to contribute and have insights to. So, to people in the audience who are looking to engage with Interact, and yes, you can pay a consulting group $1,000 an hour to chat with these people, but they're here. They're at Helix Park all the time, and I think this is a really special thing that we have, that I would encourage folks to go out and just network, introduce, don't go too hard on them, but just, tell them what you're passionate about, and I think you're going to find that they're going to be reciprocal of that and want to just be helpful. And again, I think we're in a unique space and place to facilitate that, and we can really build something special here. So.
And I think what this also shows is the importance of building that multidisciplinary ecosystem and having layers of patients and families and clinicians all coming together to solve the problem together. And hearing from ARPA-H and what they're truly doing breakthroughs in, it's very inspiring just to know together we can go so much farther, and we can dream even bigger if you have the right team in place. So kind of a different type of question. So curious to hear what role AI and or big data already is and will be playing in your future innovations of your startup.
Yeah, sure, I can start. So our technology, we look at novel markers. It's repetitive DNA, which people have known about, and there are a few uses for it. It's how you do forensics testing. It's been around forever, but that's always been focused on just a few microsatellites throughout your genome, or this is repetitive regions throughout your genome, and there are quite a few more. There's over 1 million of them. And our CSO has been studying these now for 20 years. He actually started at UT Southwestern in a Human Genome Center. And it's only been since AI that we have been able to take all of this really complex data. It's not big data per se, 1 million samples, so what? The problem is these 1 million locations in regions in your genome have an infinite number of mutation states. So without AI, our entire platform really would not produce anything that's clinically actionable. So it's critical for us.
I would say in the ADC space, right? So target is everything. Understanding the right target. What does a patient profile look like? How do they respond to treatment? And what might change at the cell surface level? Any other cellular pathways involved in resistance to the cytotoxic drug that you're doing, that you're treating for patients. And then I would say ultimately, right, there's sort of higher level questions that we're all trying to use this data to utilize to understand who's going to respond to therapy, what are that, what might that safety profile be? Would you be predisposed to a certain side effect based on SNPs or other changes you have in certain regions? And so I think, as we get smarter, and perhaps AI will help us sort of sift through these large data sets to, again, get more personalized, customized therapy. I think that's really the promise that we're all trying to get to. And then there's some cool, like, digital twin avatar stuff that I don't fully understand, but it sounds really cool. I know MD Anderson's trying to do a lot of that space there. So I think it's really exciting to see how we can leverage this.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, okay, I shall. Well, for us, it's really a multimodal analysis. So I described a little bit about what our biomarker is doing in terms of measuring physical characteristics. Very interesting, single cell level. How do we leverage that with all other data at the subcellular and cellular resolution that we are collecting per each patient? And so what is unique in our case, and which is why we are I believe, able to leverage the AI and digital analysis very well, is that we actually measure fresh tissue directly when it comes out of a patient with cellular and subcellular resolution. This same sample remains completely viable post-Artidis analysis to go for H&E and any kind of molecular analysis. So suddenly you can stack all this different type of information, being molecular, thinking about genome, thinking about proteome, and then the interactions, which is actually the mechanome. So really being able to utilize machine learning at the end of the day to analyze that complex data can provide truly interesting information in terms of predicting treatment response, increasing number of patients that we can select for treatments or optimize their therapy. And also, I think what is important is, in addition, what we can technically do in terms of AI is kind of the regulatory and integration piece. Because how do we bring that platform into the hospital, or that the hospital will interact with the company's platform? One of the ways how we solve that problem is that we really integrate it already as a part of clinical trials. That means that, technology needs to be bulletproof, cyber secure, certified, but then it allows you to have direct access to EPIC data, REDCap data, obviously coded and not identifiable, but you suddenly have the ability to work with perspective data longitudinally, and less thinking about, oh, I'm collecting million data points over million patients, but maybe I'm taking 10,000 patients with millions of data points, and in that perspective setting, suddenly you have incredible environment to actually have, at the end, clinical utility. So science, I am a scientist, I love it, but how do I utilize it in the clinics?
Maybe from the engineering perspective, I'm very excited about the application of large language models to design proteins from scratch with the desired function. So we all know David Baker shared the Nobel Prize this year for this, and in my lab we have a project where we design molecules with the specific attributes based on the algorithm developed in the Baker lab with RF diffusion and all that. And because those binders just don't exist, they're not there, and so we have to make them from scratch. And it's still in its infancy, it's still nascent technology. There's a lot of cross-reactivity, but I think at some point when we generate enough data and train the models appropriately, we'll be able to generate binders in silico in an hour instead of immunizing animals and following them up for 2 months. And so that will really revolutionize engineering, and also will allow us to multiplex in multiple directions, which is something that's very difficult to do now with the limited resources, especially in the academic setting or in a startup setting. So that's great.
Well, it's time for our final question. So in looking out in the audience today, We have a wide array of backgrounds and people that come with a lot of expertise, a lot of networks. What are you seeking at this stage? And let's start with, what is your why? I want to kind of channel my little inner Simon Sinek a second. Like, what is your why? What motivates you? Why this company? Why is this so important? And what are you seeking? How can people in this room help you get to that next step?
Yeah, so the why is probably shared amongst several of us because we could all do a lot of things and it's helping the patient. So when I took this job or this opportunity, it happened on the tail end of my best friend dying of colon cancer. And all I knew when I got the first call was, hey, I've heard of that pathway. It has something to do with colon cancer. And so as we got into it and the biology made sense, there's a lot of other opportunity there. But ultimately, that's what drives me every day. And then in terms of what we're looking for, like hopefully to get to know all of you guys, right? Because it does take a village. You know, at every stage you need investors, you need partners, you need advisors, you just need supporters, right? And you need people who are in your corner. And everyone who showed up to this at some level is a supporter because you're interested in finding solutions. So hopefully we all meet our goals in that context.
I think why for me is also very easy to answer. We truly want to bring a new way of diagnostics and treatment optimization to the patients. The unique aspect of our technology, because as I mentioned already, is at bedside, we can decentralize access. So we can both offer the opportunity to have high-end analysis at premier cancer centers like MD Anderson, but also at the community level. And I think that's really what motivates me to bring our technology as broadly as possible. Now, how to get there, I think that's a totally different topic because we have heard a lot about the challenges in diagnostics, especially around funding, commercialization, and so on. And I think this is really what ecosystems such as here can provide, that we work together to bring diagnostics and therapeutics together more closely to actually benefit the patients and the whole healthcare system, and that we think about beyond those 5 to 10% patients that we select with our biomarkers today, because yes, this 5 to 10% of the patients will respond. What about the other 90, right? How do we change their biology? So that's really our why and how, because we strongly believe that we can use our technology to provide information about local physical characteristics which you can modify using different modalities, specific chemotherapy, specific radiation, such that then the actual targeted therapy can work and act more effectively. We are just entering one phase 3 trial with MD Anderson together in pancreatic cancer space, which is really difficult space, and I think we hope that we can bring finally some good results in this area. So thank you.
Yeah, so my why actually starts back a bit. It's been over 20 years since the human genome was first sequenced, and there have been billions and billions of dollars spent studying its relationship with diseases, including cancer. And we all say cancer is caused by a combination of genetics and environmental factors, including your lifestyle, yet we still can't predict who's going to get cancer, right? So my why is I believe that Orbit Genomics has found a missing piece of the puzzle to cancer, and we really are trying to move forward to figure out how can we actually predict who's going to get cancer, and our ultimate goal is to prevent you, help you prevent you from getting cancer. So that is our why. And my ask is for collaborators or funding. I'm here to network because that's such a key part of being a startup.
I'll be brief. I would say, you know, for us, our why is to take this, what looked like a very promising preclinical platform and see if it really could be part of, you know, the next wave of this promising therapy and be, you know, best-in-class drugs. So that's what we're seeking to answer and continue to get funding to answer that question. And so my ask is actually for the audience is, I'll turn it around and say, how can I be helpful to folks? And that's really a big part of how I operate, and so, you know, always happy to just have a conversation, and you know, you've gotten to know me a little bit, so if there's any way that I can be helpful, please do reach out. I'm very accessible and willing to have a chat, so thanks.
So our wives is clearly very, you know, it's very clear, as others pointed out, it's really make a difference in patients' lives. And that becomes very obvious when you come from a place that translates those things and sees the effect in the clinic. And even though, you know, lab rats like me are removed from the clinic for a good reason, we still sometimes get to meet with patients. Some of those are the long-term survivors, seeing them living their best lives. And they were really on their way to hospice. And so what we want to do at March is, now that we know that it works on a small scale, we really want to scale it up and see this repeat many, many times to bring patients back to life, bring children back to their families. And really, I'm hoping to team up with all of you eventually to help fund these high-risk approaches and clinical translation, but also, you know, team up with highly talented people to help execute them. And many of those are in the room. And, you know, we're very fortunate to have resources that are available to us in Houston. You know, we're learning from the best in the field as well. So very exciting times.
Thank you all for your time and for this lovely discussion. And as you can hear, it's all about continuing to build out the ecosystem, continuing to have the conversations. So I encourage all to keep the conversation going.